All right. Hello, everyone. This is a breakout video taking some time to look at comics that have inspired both Jake and I. I'm Kurt Brugel, who's inking and doing story support for Turbo Pit Fighter. And you are, sir?
I'm Jake Jacobs, and you could catch me on Instagram, NY Art Teacher with only one T, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm the penciler and chief script writer for Turbo Pit Fighter, and I'm a huge fan of post-apocalyptic genre, including Road Warrior, Kamandi, um, Aliens,
Planet of the
or
Apes.
Matrix, Planet of the Apes, right? All
Yeah.
those good stuff, and we're going to be reviewing one of our great inspirations. Kurt was lucky enough to score this book that you see, this giant volume of Kamandi by Jack Kirby. I think this comes out in like 1971 or something.
It's
Um,
72, it says in here. The original started in 72.
Right. So this is actually right on the heels of Planet of the Apes. And
Yeah.
I think he was capitalizing
Oh,
on
yeah.
Planet of the Apes. I think, DC Comics was like, yeah, let's do something about Planet of the Apes. We'll do The Last Boy on Earth, except instead of just having apes, they have all kinds of different animal humanoids and antics ensue. So why don't you kick us off? You've unboxed and
Yeah, I
what?
unwrapped the dust cover
Uh-huh.
um, just so it's easier to flip through. But yeah, we're going to do issue one. There's 20 issues in here. This is issue one. So that's the cover. And this is the first page, which is Kamandi.
Well, why don't you show
Last.
them one at a time? You got to move it left and right so you can see one at a time. Otherwise, we're just looking right down the middle. Yeah, you got to keep
You
on
got.
moving.
Oh
Yeah,
no, I
now
can
it's
see. You can only see. You can't see the whole
oh,
thing.
yeah. Is this just a preview? Because I'm looking at the split right down the middle, and I'm seeing half of each page.
Yeah, that's as
Oh,
like
so you
so.
can see the whole thing on yours. All right, great. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yep, yep.
So this is issue one cover, and right off the bat, they're using the Statue of Liberty, which is the climactic end scene of Planet of the Apes 1, where you realize that they haven't landed on a foreign planet all this time. They've been on Earth, and they're just landed in the future because they went through a space-time warp, right?
Yeah, yeah. I get curious that, in the process Kirby took in order to launch this story in his head was to just literally keep going with what Planet of the Apes had started, which was maybe from his point of view, I'm suspecting, is like a planet full of mutants. And then there's a boy who's the last boy, and he's roaming around. But even in this world, Kamandi, um, there is a part where it kind of leans into the three pilots, astronauts that land on Earth, you know, so on and so forth. So I really just, it's once again, it's one of the amazing things about the limitlessness that Kirby allowed himself to take in order to create something, which I do believe is a near lost art form in comic books. So, with that being said,
Yeah, so this is 1970. So this is one of the big titles on Jack Kirby's move from Marvel to DC. Not sure exactly what his first project was when he moves from Marvel to DC, but for about 10 years, almost 10 years, he has been doing Fantastic Four and Thor and X-Men and Avengers and all of these historically classic Marvel titles. And as people do, they have fallings out, and Kirby certainly wasn't getting paid. Marvel was starting to capitalize on some of the characters and make money on merchandising and real money, and Jack Kirby wasn't included on it. Everything was a fight with negotiations. So he said, "Well, why don't I just go across town?" Or across the avenue, whatever, I think
Yeah.
Madison had, and
Yeah.
work for DC. DC was more than happy to have him. He was, a huge name, but he was also so prolific. So he
Yeah.
brought with him, this built-in audience, and when he gets to DC, his style is, I would call it his quicker style,
Yeah.
but I would also call it his better style, his pop art style.
Yeah.
He goes from, and right there, on the right, you see Kamandi's hand, right? That is like a real good example of how he started to draw hands, and he didn't, really articulate the fingers like a realistic sketch. He started to do this comic book shorthand that was so unique to him, with such thick, black outlines, and such like an instantly recognizable repetitiveness, but it was also one of the greatest just storytellers in terms of moving a story along, in terms of having action-packed sequences, making everything look like really kind of like melodramatically over the top. And here in this post-apocalyptic landscape, a lot of just like debris and like crusty buildings, and everything's in disrepair. Um, and you're just really getting the sense of the decay of the time, and here in this big splash page, you see this kid paddling, and the way it's drawn, it's a big pin up, right? It's the giant figure, and then everything else is just kind of like minor. So they're introducing this character right on page one. And something that I love is these chapter titles, right? So you're inside of a comic, but you have these, like, maybe like a third of a page or a quarter of the page is taken up on these giant titles, and you get to see like Jack Kirby's great lettering, and he has his like earthquake style. And then when he was doing Black Panther, he had this real kind of like, I would call it even graffiti-ish style, like really like distorted lettering. But this gives an opportunity to have like a little narration up top, or a caption up top, which introduces us, tells us very important background that we need to know to get into the story. So
Yeah. And so he's heading towards the underground bunker complex. Now there's can you imagine being like 11 or 12 years old and pulling this comic book up and off the stands and flipping to it? I mean, once again, your world would change. And if you were able, which I don't know if, well, I mean, sneaking into the movie theater, or was Planet of the Apes PG, or was it
uh,
R? You think it was a, that's a good question. I'm gonna have to look that up, and I'll make a little screen capture. But can you imagine, once again, um, you saw the movie, it's like a Star Wars type of thing, and then you pick something up, it's the comic book which you're getting into, and then wow, this is picking up where it leaves off at that movie,
right, and
um,
this was
you know,
really Martin Goodman's legacy. The comics were just chasing the fads, and you saw the same thing with Master Kung Fu, and the Kung Fu craze. They have a comic to capitalize on that. When the Black Panther comes out, you start to see, the Black Power movement, starting to really make headlines, and so everything that kind of comes along, they're just trying to like move with the times. This is interesting because it's a double page spread. So, when you open up the book, you think you're getting like this big splash page, but Kirby did this a lot, you know, and it's like kind of
Yeah.
like you ain't
Yep.
seen nothing yet, right? And he does this giant artwork that's so big it goes across both pages. You know, he draws the water in those famous Kirby dots, so you have a lot of great black and
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
light and dark interplay. And the Statue of Liberty again, which we saw on the cover. So I think they're kind of like hitting you over the head with this a little, but you know, when you see the Empire State Building also in there, right? It's and then it kind of looks. I don't know if that's like kind of close, right? 30th and Fifth versus all the way out in Staten Island. So maybe things are getting moved
May,
around here.
yeah, well, what if Statue of Liberty is off her feet and she's just bobbing through this the
Right,
water? You know, her buoyancy
right. Co-
has her like she's just kind of floating through
yeah.
the currents
Well,
and stuff,
the
and
bases
maybe
have.
even yeah. So
Well,
like, and
yeah,
then gives an even more infinite depth to of the ocean, the water. The water levels have rised, everybody.
right.
They
And then
raised.
you're getting these really like kind of like, you know, post-apocalyptic colors in the background, you know, like smoke and you know, just like, you know, gray skies or purplish skies, right? Maybe like some kind of sunset. Now, my big question, since you're able to see that up there, is that original color or is that
I believe it is. I I believe it is. I think they actually because the one that I saw, well, the archives I think was recolored, and it had that really high, uh, um, uh, like saturated yellow, red, blue, so on and so forth. Um, but this has a little bit. This is way more closer to um, kind of that feeling, and the paper is off white, so it's not a stark, flat, crisp, pristine white. So even these seagulls, if you really get in there, you're like, oh, there's a
yeah.
little bit of off coloredness to it. So it's one of the reasons I hunted down this issue,
So you think
because I have seen the archive and I didn't appreciate
so
the coloring
this
of it.
is the authentic original color then?
I would say it's close to. I mean, I can verify it,
Okay.
but
Yeah, I mean
it's for what I researched. This was a lot closer to the originals than the archive was.
right. So when they're reproducing these things, you know, they a lot of times they go back to the black and white line art and they just have somebody recolor it using, you know, brand new
Mm,
computer techniques and you know that there they do, you know, they I saw online somebody said I'm not a colorist, I'm a flatter. And I was like, what is that? A
yeah, yeah,
flatter. So
yeah,
a flatter
yeah.
is somebody that comes in and they colorize everything, but they just make every
The shapes.
yep,
It's just all the
everything
shapes.
flat color.
And then a colorist. Yep. And then the colorist will come in and do, funky, fancy
Right. Well,
stuff
it
to
depends on
impress you.
it depends on the style, but you know, they might want that, you know, or they might want that as a starting point, you know, for a real colorist, or they
Right.
might come in and just like do you know, drafting on top of that. So there's all these different
Right.
ways of going about it. Um,
Yeah, because the paper is, for this time, 1970s and prior, it's still crappy paper. So that is also a big effect. This is not crappy paper. It's just like I said, a newsprint off white kind of.
Yeah,
So
when
it
they're
kind of
going off
brings you
white, they're
back.
trying to like give you like a throwback to the, you know, to the age, you know, of the, you know, that they're trying to show you that, you know, the story is a little bit aged. They're trying to simulate that a little bit. Um, and I'm looking at this page now, and I'm wondering how, you know, whether they went back to the black and white line art and recolored it, or, you know, the other thing they can do is, you know, they can just take you know, a comic and they can scan it at such a high resolution and then downsample it so
Mm,
that you lose the halftone dot. um, it's
mm,
kind of hard to lose it completely, but if you
mm,
have a really high resolution scanner and you scan a comic page, you can get rid of a lot of the halftone dot so that you can, you know,
mm,
reprint it again. And introduce a new halftone dot. The other way that
Right.
they might have went is if they still have the original color separations, right? Because
It's
then
interesting.
you go back and you just recreate the process that they did in the first place, except you probably
Right.
have
Well,
much
here's something interesting. They added a bikini top to this female. I'm gonna look into the originals, the scans, um, you know, and see if she was actually topless, which I would assume she was because they have actually put a blue bikini top on her.
Now, how do you know they added it?
So that kind of gives me, because it's cut. It's a complete freer form
I can't really see it. It's out
than
of the
just
frame.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
but
let me lift it up. I don't know. Lift it up.
yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know that they wouldn't have had boob and they wouldn't have had side boob in a DC comic. So,
Well, I'm gonna look into it. I'm gonna look into it. So I will flash something up on the screen that verifies either
hmm
way. But here's an interesting thing. Like, um, we're talking post-apocalyptic, but Kamandi's like, oh, look, there's people, and but these people are just like the ones in a Planet of the Apes, where they're like,
right,
because he says, hello there, So it has this immediate feeling of the apocalypse happened, you know, 6 months ago, but there's this regression in humanity, and they're back in these small groups of people who are roaming for foraging and for their survival
right.
and
Well,
stuff.
they
So,
wanted to flip the tables, and so the humans are
mhm.
the primitive ones, and
Correct.
I know that they were mute in the Planet of the Apes saga, right? They couldn't speak. They lost their
Yes.
language somewhere.
Well, all they're doing is screaming here. They're just
hmm
screaming. E and ah. They're not ya. So they're not like, holy
Right.
let's hightail it out of here because that guy's got, a canoe, or an inner tube or
So they're
whatever.
definitely less than.
Um, yeah. But then there's a big explosion. It's in the area of the bunker. He makes his way, and of course he has all these booby traps. Um,
Did they ever
and
explain what the
then,
explosion is? What causes the explosion?
well, there's what are they? These like dogmen,
Yeah.
baboon. Yeah, I think these are like dogmen, right? And they have busted in, and the explosion was one of his booby
Oh, okay.
traps. But unfortunately, they kill his grandfather, so he's officially the last man on the earth. So
He's
but once again, he's using each of these little scenarios to keep introducing the depth of what the world's about, which I have referred to in our videos. Is it's one thing to just give you the establishing 3 pages of the world, but it's another thing to just use the story and then have elements in it to constantly give you a glimpse into this world and the situation and possibly why, something like that. Yeah, this is a wolf.
right. So it's kind of like a wolf human already.
Yeah, well, it's the mutant thing,
Uh-huh.
you know. Um, another great comic to get a hold of and review is Richard Corbin's Mutant. Just now that I'm thinking about it, I got to write that down. So, because there's no, yeah, we won't even get into that because we're gonna stay focused on here. Um, so there's a showdown.
Yeah, you talk about
What are the
Richard
we
Corbin. We
finished
could
off on?
definitely just get
Yeah.
lost on that on the sidetrack. But I was
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
I was researching Luke Cage, and who knew? But Richard Corbin actually did some Luke Cage stuff in like a very gritty adult, mature version,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was
Yep.
amazing to see him, uh, Richard Corbin
Yeah.
tackle that kind of like real street kind of vibe, and they really just like um
They
yeah,
embraced him.
and
They
yeah,
embraced
so
him. I
So
mean, they did.
when we do our big Richard Corbin retrospective, we'll have to touch on that
Oh,
that was
absolutely.
probably, you know, one of the later things that he ever did.
So this is uh, 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 I'm not gonna put this on you, Jake. But when you and I were getting to know each other, and as I've said before, you know, we were at your dad's house, and then you dumped out this box of comics, and they were basically all Commandies, and you're like, "Here, read these." Um, I'd like to hear your take on the impact, because I find a lot of similarities in the way you approach storytelling that Kirby
Okay.
does. Um, and here, one, this is a very, you know, obviously awesome action, but I'd love to get your take on what you get out of seeing the, you know, and this is just four, these are six
Yeah.
squares, just
R-
six squares, and then it goes six squares, and then it's a big payoff, and it's incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
you could live here, you could live here for hours, just like,
Yeah.
ah,
Well, you got, so this is like classic Kirby action sequence, and you know he's going over in his mind this choreographed fight, and you know it's amazing. He uses, you know, very reliant on the speed lines to show you the directions, you know, that people's arms are swinging or the way the body's falling, and you know, and how he kind of centers the lettering of the sound effect right in the impact, right? So you have these little impact, you know, areas, and and then these, you know, wind or, you know, or speed
yeah,
line areas. They're
yeah,
very directional, you know, and there's also a flow from panel to panel, right? Like on the left, you can see like the guy's arm is flailing. Well, that's diagonally pointing right to the next panel, right? And so all of those things, you know, are second nature to somebody like Kirby. But you know, when you're learning about art and you're learning about, you know, how to break down, you know, you want to lead the eye, and you know, you go from one panel to the next, and whether it's your word balloons or whether your speed lines or whether your sound effects or whether the positioning of characters or the, you know, or just the overall composition of the panels, you always want to like keep the person, you know, busy, you know, in a way it's like distracting them, right? You know, so that, you know, this is Kirby's quick style, right? He doesn't want you to spend an hour on the page. He wants you to spend, you know, a couple of minutes on the page or a couple of moments on the page. And you know, it's this fight sequence, you know, this is supposed to get your heart racing, and it's supposed to stimulate your brain, you know. And he does have some
does.
dialogue in there, so it isn't like it's just, it isn't it like
Yeah,
it's just like mindless like
it's
punching, right?
amazing.
There's you know,
Yeah, I think I think in a way that, you know, going back against, you know, again to the whole having seen Planet of the Apes and these movies. I mean, that was a technologically special effects uh, um, feast as a film in what,
I think
1971.
it was
I'm
70. Yeah,
assuming.
I think it comes
Uh,
out in 70.
77, yeah. But it's a, you know, and it's right on the tail of
2001. One.
2000
Yeah.
Space Odyssey. So, you know, they're really being conscious about the limitations, but they're putting it out there in a way that makes you go boom. So maybe that had an effect on why Kirby sped things up, because he felt like he was John Henry against the film industry.
Well, yeah, you know, again, he was capitalizing on something. He was probably figuring out this character in this world as he went along, and he probably didn't realize like how cool it was and how, you know, how it was going to actually um advance the genre, you know, or to be, you know, such a good
Yep.
example of the post-apocalyptic genre that it would influence, you know, another generation. You know, and he was kind of bringing it because Planet of the Apes was brought to the comics eventually. It wasn't until they had a
Yeah,
couple of sequels, in the movies, but
correct.
they figured out, hey, let's just franchise this out, and but Kamandi, it was different. It was unique in its own way. It took off on the idea that something happened to the world, but it's different things. And what I always loved about Kamandi was that as he travels around, to different areas, you see like every region or every area has its own different society of creatures, right? And different things going on.
Yeah.
And, that was something that, I mean, I was just so enraptured with that, it inspired me to
Hmm.
create my own comic based on that. So this was like, you go from,
And yes, there's a map in here. There's a map at the end of this first issue. So we'll get to it. But yeah, because the Tiger Men basically rule North America. I think portions of Canada is like some sort of like volcanic radioactivity place, but the Tiger Men rule the North America and I think Central America too. But yeah, when we get to that, that's going to be, as I've referred to, Turbo having some sense of just doesn't have to be worldview topographical map, but it could have like an immediacy of like the different arenas and the size of the arenas from like amateur to the minor leagues to the majors to the Superdome, was one of the things I was thinking. And I even put on my whiteboard in my studio an area that would have been called like the
right.
eradicated zone, so which could be that kind of place. But yeah, he's got his three-wheeler, and once again, you know it makes me feel like the apocalypse happened like 3 to 6 months ago, and he's now being forced out because territorial. There's these battles between tigers
Yeah.
and leopards and wolf men and rat guys. So you know, poor Kamandi gets stuck in the middle of it all, and has to navigate and
It
survive
brings
it.
up a really
And
good question
so
because I think
it's
Kirby is doing a metaphor here, like for different like species or different like tribes. I think the metaphor, to humans is like how tribal we are in our, or maybe even regional, right? Like, um, like one
yeah,
country is defending its borders. So here, you have, these regions defending their borders, or, everybody's just kind of like fighting over the resources. But, the inherent differences, the natural differences in species, right? It makes us different from each other. And, that automatically breeds conflict. So, Kirby is capturing a little bit of that.
yeah.
And I'm wondering, what the metaphor for Planet of the Apes then means, right? Because, was it man versus beast? Was it a metaphor for racism? What was the
It's good. That's a
did you ever like
that's a good question.
ruminate on that?
I have. I don't want to. I don't want to. I want to save it until because I'm going to get a copy of the Boom Studios Archive One of the magazine. So I'm going to work on that. Um, just got to save my lunch
You're
money.
really just using this as an excuse. You're using this as an excuse to buy a lot of cool comics, aren't you?
Shh, shh,
Okay,
hush,
don't tell the
hush. I
the
might have
better
to
half,
cut
right?
this out. So, but it's a tax write-off. It's a
But
tax
yeah,
write-off
no,
too, by the
sure,
way.
absolutely. Yeah, so that it's always an interesting question. Like, we look at comics on the surface, and it is what you see. But then, when it comes to, because we know now from like interviews and history of Star Trek that they were really dealing with the
Yeah,
politics, right? The Star Trek, every time they're talking about aliens, they were supposed to be talking about people of other races, and it was very clearly a metaphor, going back to the Twilight Zone and Roddenberry and Sperling, they very, very clearly, were unable, not allowed, to talk about really divisive or controversial topics, so that they would always substitute aliens,
Yeah.
right, whenever it was, supposed to be like, something about somebody from a different race or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, Kamandi, it is a derivative work, but it does, have its own uniqueness, and it does, and of course the pedigree of Jack Kirby, right? Anything he touches is like, is sought after and collected now and studied now, and I'm definitely a big fan, and the artwork, the storytelling, I totally get into it. One day we'll do another breakout. I have my Kamandi imitation comic that's called Pearl White
Yeah.
Malady, that I'm quite far along on with my students. We'll do that, and you'll be able to see the shameless
Yeah.
comparison. But but then again, it also takes off in its own
Correct.
direction
Correct.
too.
So
So
another
you
nod
know,
to Planet of the Apes, which I think is very tasteful in just capturing once again the moments that make you go, oh wow. And so and then of course now, just like in Planet of the Apes, um, Kamandi, played by Charlton Heston, is now a
right.
pet, a slave. He just has the ability to speak. So, so he's more of a novelty item and such, but he's also more than just that. He's a free thinking individual. So he has a lot of run-ins and you know, just general like
Yeah, now
screw this, buddy.
that gets in right, that is definitely a that's definitely a highlight of the Planet of the Apes sequel, when they catch Taylor
Yes.
speaking. So it leads me to believe that this came out after maybe that sequel was already out.
Well, he says in the movie, he's, the original Planet of the Apes, Charlton Heston. I think the breakout moment is, "Get your hands off of me, you damn dirty ape!"
You loud,
And
right,
everybody's like,
right,
"What?" So that's that's just a seminal connecting point
and
within this completely fantastic place that, when you originally see it, but closer to back then, you're like, what the hell is going on? And then all of a sudden that busts open and you're like, whoa, this thing's rolling now. It's off its wheels.
right, and how ironic is it that Charlton Heston later in life becomes that character, right? You dirty, like, don't you take your hands off my gun, right? He becomes the the head of the NRA. Charlton Heston is the president of the NRA, and becomes a radical, Second Amendment extremist in real life, and he flirts with running for office. He does some incredible interviews where he's, considered a racist, by these documentary guys, but at that point he's really old and over the hill.
Well, he,
But,
you
how,
have to give him the benefit of the doubt of how far along in detachment he is, having the career that he had. I consider him personally one of my favorite actors. My second favorite movie to Conan the Barbarian is The Warlord with Charlton Heston and Richard Boone, which John Milius, who did Conan, basically leaned heavily on in order to get. He used the lighting in it and everything, but you know I've seen interviews with Heston, and they're trying to corner him on being the original action hero. And he was just like, I was getting paid to make movies, and so my job was that. But that humility then gets sandwiched with, he's in every great, let's say, action sci-fi movie until Star Wars, you know. So
Yeah.
so I think he has definitely the outruling of out of touch. And then he has his own, his own world, and that just so happened to butt up against the NRA nonsense, if you will. But staying on Kamandi, um, in moving forward, because I think we're actually coming to the end of this issue. Um, it. No, here they come. Here they come. So you got, you know, the original Charlton Heston here now, because then they're meeting the astronauts. So, you know, I don't know. I've never come
Right,
across.
but in this version, they're actually not even human. They're beyond human. That's Ben Boxer, and he
Right,
that button on his chest
right.
enables him to turn into a
Isn't that
steel.
though? But isn't that such an awesome thing to cause on Kamandi? Is that you see somebody that looks more like you than anything you've seen, and then you're gonna find out that he's not even, quote
Right,
unquote, like you. He's superhuman, or is it, what,
or
android,
yeah, he's got
or so
robot or
it's just,
power
I
or
mean,
something.
once again, I've not read anything or seen any interviews with Kirby where anybody was able to really touch down on his just ability to grab a handful of elements and then just go, because he's not spending a month on this. It's probably got hammered out in 5 days, because
Yeah,
he was
you
doing four
wonder
or
how
five
long it
issues
took.
of a comic every month.
Right, and does he have an inker on this, or
Yeah,
did
it's
he just get
Royer. It's
was
Royer.
oh Roy?
Oh yeah.
Oh, he was the
Oh
inker
yeah, yeah,
right
yeah.
from the beginning.
And
Right.
lettering and
Oh yeah.
lettering. So he's just doing that infamous scribbling indicator, and
Hmm.
but he's able to put in here, this is a moment from, like, ba bam ba bam ba bam, and then it's just, and why wouldn't you want to get issue 2 to find out more about the world, about Kamandi, about and then these guys, who are they? Are they human? Are they have that? He just causes all of this nonsense that you're going to eventually make sense of it, because he'll give you just more and more information. He's not going to explain it to you in a hard factual way. He's going to let you bring your imagination to it. Hence, it's very hard to find stories, comic books specifically, that do that respect you and what you have to offer and bring to a story.
Great. So um so we haven't really determined how the coloring works, and is there a coloring credit on page one?
Nope, no, no. Now I haven't
Because
gone
they
through. I haven't. I'm gonna go through this part, because I just got this
yeah,
like 2 days ago. Um,
right, but on the first page of issue one,
no. Oh, you're saying
what
the actual issue.
yeah, yeah, what like how it originally appeared.
Nope,
Did they change
nope.
that at all?
It's just
It doesn't say coloring. I wonder if
no
that was
coloring.
taken out.
I don't know.
Right, so maybe whoever originally colored it is taken out, and they just increased the rest of those letters to fill the space
Right, right.
because the thing was recolored. So now I'm
Well,
thinking that the
I'll
book
look
was
it up.
recolored.
I'll look it up. Because
Okay.
I want to find out more and more about this. And so when we review issue 2 and on, we'll be answering some questions that are constantly being brought up, and really get into it, because I'm excited to be able to share with you here and now just the impact from either side of being a writer and a penciler and inker and comic books and art and all this type of stuff. But it'll be really super fantastic to see what we get in the way of, like, comments below, and like I said, help us find other similar works that have been made in the last 10 years. But
Yeah, well,
uh,
they probably have an omnibus book of every one of Kirby's
oh yeah, oh yeah,
series.
oh
I'm
yeah,
sure they did
yeah,
the Demon, and I'm sure they
yeah,
did the New Gods, and I'm sure they have one of these for
right, right.
for all of the stuff. Why wouldn't you?
So
But yeah,
and
no,
then
I was
and
just curious about the color.
Yeah, but then not to give this away, but just this ending is I thought was it's just very heartfelt. You know what I mean? Like it leaves you on a cliffhanger, but there's this huge amount of like empathy or sympathy
Yeah, look at that.
for them.
He sees somebody that looks like his own kind, and he melts.
Yeah,
Um,
that's great.
and then we're coming into the year of the rat. Now that sounds like an allusion to the Chinese zodiac,
Yeah.
and you could just see Kirby's mind spinning. Like, okay, I did wolf, I did dog, I did gorilla, and now we're gonna do rat. So we might as well make it the year of the rat, right?
Right,
And
right,
just
right.
do like a rotation, right?
Right. But
Amazing.
I wanted to leave on this note because
Uh,
I really believe in this type of uh, extra extras in storytelling. So, this is what I constantly refer to when I'm saying like, oh, we should, start getting like a map. But this is like a, from outer space looking down, and like South America is this. Oh, I was wrong. So the expanding tiger is only the East Coast down to Louisiana and to Texas. Then there's the gorilla community, Undersea New York Rat Network, and then the Dominion of Devils is Canada. And then all the lakes got together because now they're Monster Lake, the intelligent. I mean, this is just like once again, like I don't know how anybody could not have bought issue 2, and then assuring that Jack's got work. You know,
right.
you know.
Yeah. I'm looking at, yeah, I think I found the original art for page one, and it doesn't say any, it doesn't mention
Oh,
any colorist.
no. It's a
So,
bullpen type of thing. I mean, they just
okay,
somebody
yeah,
somebody rips the color plates, and they just have to make it. I think.
interesting, interesting.
Maybe, I mean, blonde would be a color opposite black, but you would have to, you know, ink in the black hair, which I would indicate, in the pencils, Jack Kirby, and then, Royer then inks it, and he would have been a, black haired kind of guy. But nope, there was enough breath in the space of the pencil lines to indicate that it's blonde. And then when it got to whoever ended up being the colorist, he's like, oh, he's blonde. I don't know, Jack.
So,
Maybe.
yeah, so I'm seeing some good stuff. There are these new like wannabe Jack Kirby artists out there
Oh
doing
yeah,
comics,
yeah.
and I'm looking right now at a cover called Kamandi Challenge number one, and I think the artist, well, it just has Abnet, Didio, Eaglesham, Giffen, Coblish, and Hi-Fi. That must be the coloring studio. So Abnett or DDO is this new Jack Kirby style penciler and
Hmm.
artist. And you know Bruce Timm, right? Do you know that
Oh
artist?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so he's very Kirby-ish. These guys are great. These guys are amazing, and I would love to see them, get handed off the series, and maybe it's worth picking up this Commandy Challenge number one. I don't know if this is even a actual printed comic or if it's just like a, a
Send me the
pin up.
link. Send me a
Yeah,
link to it, and I'll
it
do a
might
little
just be a pin up
investigation.
that it
Throw
appeared on.
something up here just to get people there.
Yeah,
But
because
yeah,
sometimes it's just a cover and then you're like disappointed, right? So,
yeah. Well, we could find out. But yeah, once again, this is the end of issue 1 of Commandy. This is a breakout episode that I will have out this week. And we were going to do this every week, as we also record an episode on Sundays that we do, Jake and I. But please, if you made it this far into the video, you like what you're hearing, do all the necessities to help us stay relevant. But more importantly, the major reason Jake and I are doing this is on YouTube specifically is to find other people that enjoy the same content. And we're content makers. We would assume maybe you're content makers, or if anything, would like to be a part of the process of making content like this. So we all have some new and fresh entertainment. But I totally um, excited for this breakout material. We're going to do a lot of post-apocalyptic
Hmm.
stuff, but
Yeah.
that's all I have, Jake.
Yeah, keep it going. Pass the torch.
Cool.
Keep keep the spirit alive. In this case, it's DC, so I'm holding my tongue. I'm a Marvel. I'm biased, but Jack Kirby crosses both worlds. And back again. So it's all good. And yeah,
Cool.
we'll talk again next time, guys. Everybody tune in and be sure to check out our Turbo Pit Fighter making of video podcast series where we creating our own original comic book. This was just kind of like a breakout version, so make sure you check out our main offering. Yeah,
Yeah, where we talk about the same level of approach in making a comic book, not just the technological necessity in pens and paper and all that. We really do dive into the creative process and decision making that goes into making an awesome comic, which Turbo Pit Fighter is going to be. So, with that being said, I say thank you and have a great one. We'll see you again.
bye everybody. See you next time. Peace.